morning, good afternoon, good day. Welcome to the Gig Stories podcast with me, Alex, and him.
Oh,
and him,
me.
Apparently he's not even with us, listener.
I thought you were going to say, and him, Chris.
Yeah.
My humblest apologies. I'm sorry.
You know what, though? I threw you in there, but also I do like to talk, don't I? So in fairness to you, you were just sat there doing your thing, thinking, Winters is talking again.
Yeah, I tend to switch off. When you start, I just kind of go, it's like white noise. You know what I mean?
And if you listen carefully, listeners, you can tell exactly when Chris is switching off.
There's a little click.
Oh, wait. And I'll ask a question.
Yeah. And what's next?
How are you doing?
Oh, yeah, I'm very well. Yeah, sun's shining. And the loft is a little bit warm because obviously I need to close the windows and the skylight and can't put the fan on. But yeah, it's warm. It's uncommonly warm for September, I would say. We're talking about the weather, Alex.
I know. I mean, this is what they come for. What they come for.
It's really not.
Two white middle-aged men talking about the weather in Manchester.
What else can we talk about then? We went to a gig.
Let's be even more Manchester. Yes.
Yeah.
Can we be even more Manchester? Yes, we can. We went to a gig. Tell him, Chris.
We went to see New Order in Heaton Park, and it was fantastic, wasn't it?
I mean, I personally, as well, am really lucky because I've been going to a few gigs. I know you've been to a few now, but that was something to behold, wasn't it? And if you didn't see our social media posts, what really blows my mind is that was New Order's biggest ever Manchester gig.
Yeah, it feels like they should have done, because they've never played a football stadium then.
No, not Manchester.
Not Manchester, yeah. So
that's sort of scandalous, is it not? Joy Division, New Order, they're one of the biggest. I'm going to say British because everyone around the world knows them, but they're one of the biggest British bands ever, and they're only just playing Heaton Park now to 38,000.
Yeah, it was good though, wasn't it? It was, the weather was good, and the vibe, the crowd was, totally up for it, and they were just on really good form. And one thing I was thinking was just Steve Morris. I don't know what he's on, but just to keep up that level of drumming for that amount of time. Oh,
and he's in his late 20s now, isn't he, or something? It was the energy, and do you know what? I was trying to explain this. The goodwill, and I don't know if that came across sincerely enough. I haven't felt goodwill like that from a crowd towards a band before. It maybe ever. It was like as soon as they came on, everyone there, and I believe it was 38,000, everyone was just like, yes, this is happening at last, and we just want you to enjoy it and nail it. Everyone was behind them, and of course they come on and open up with Regret.
Yeah.
And everyone, including me, I don't know what you were doing.
Well, you know exactly what I was doing.
Well, yeah, taking photos. I can't believe you could take photos. That's why I couldn't be a photographer. I'd have forgotten that whole first song. I wouldn't have taken any shots. I'd have been Bernard Sumner's feet yelling out, I would like a place. It was brilliant from the off, and it was great all night, wasn't
it? Absolutely. And
can I ask you then, how do you cope as a music fan? You love New Order. A band comes on and starts with a song like Regret, which is one of the greatest songs ever written. How do you focus on your photography? Because you only have 2 or 3 songs.
Yeah.
But how did you not just lose it and just not stand there screaming and whelping and swinging your shirt around your head?
You just kind of switch off and you just go into work mode, really. I mean, it's tough, and there have been some gigs that I've photographed, and it's been very difficult to concentrate. I think ones that spring to mind are I shot James at Latitude. I can't remember what they opened with, but I'm such a massive James fan. So that was quite tough to concentrate. I think Liam Gallagher as well, him coming on, and I think he might have started with Rock and Roll Star.
Oh wow!
And it was in a relatively small venue. It was in the Ritz. It was the one which was about a week after the Manchester bomb.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, it was at points like that. If I'm heavily invested in the band or the artist, then you just have to put it to one side and concentrate.
What was there's quite a few questions I'd like to ask all related to that. What's like been the most bizarre start? Yeah, what's been the most bizarre start to a gig or strange that you've seen, or I don't know, the artist was held at, I don't know, something. What's a memorable one?
I was at the Academy and I was photographing De La Soul.
Oh yes.
And they were late. They must have been about 40 minutes late.
Right. Okay.
And then when they actually came on stage, I can't remember what they started with, but there were only two of us in the pit, and which was surprising anyway, because it's De La Soul.
Exactly.
But they spoke directly to us and said, "Put your cameras down. You need to dance. Everyone else is dancing." So for a lot of the first tune, we had to put our cameras down and actually dance in the pit to De La Soul, because they didn't request it, they demanded it.
3, that's the magic number.
It definitely wasn't that one, but yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, they were really sweet, and talk about how to get the crowd back on side when the crowd was getting a bit restless, and they'd been it was 40 minutes later than advertised, but yeah, they got the crowd back on side and embarrassed us, which was lovely.
Have you ever had someone really play up to you?
Who likes the camera?
Well, you're asking that question.
I wouldn't say playing up, but sometimes you get people who are a real gift, and I would say Jake Shillingford from My Life Story he's just such a good front man, and that if you're going to photograph him, you're going to get some decent shots, because he's always kicking and jumping and standing on the monitors, and he's always good value, definitely.
Well, your pics of I've forgotten his name. I'm so sorry. I'm sure he's probably not listening though. Your man at the Pigeon Detectives, when you and I went to see Shed 7 at Peace Hall.
Oh yeah.
He was amazing.
He was great. He was great to photograph. And so what I'm going to do is I'll pop up a gallery on our website of gigs that we've been to. I'm not going to put every single gig that I photograph, but I'll put ones that we talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've already talked. Well, we did our first OB,
absolutely, from
Shed 7 Peace Hall, and New Order. So I'll get those two galleries up, and and you can
give the people what they want.
Yeah, or give them what they don't even know that they want yet.
Who is left? Because this is like the Chris Payne episode. Who haven't you shot that you and you're only allowed to choose one that you really want to?
Well, I'm going to refuse to just name one, because
I'm not going to let you refuse.
Well, upcoming gigs are all of them seem to be bands that I've seen live, but not photographed before. So Shed 7, I'd never photographed before. I'd seen live before. New Order, that was my first New Order gig.
I know, which is great. Made it better.
Yeah, I can't believe that. But then next week, or this week now, as you listen to this, Ash.
Yeah, of course.
I've seen them before, but I've never photographed them. I'm going to be photographing Boo Radley's, who I've seen before but never photographed. And there's another one as well. Suede. Suede was the other one.
Suede.
So all 5 in a row that I've never photographed before.
Amazing. Now that is genuine, and I'm so chuffed that you're back. And I was at Shed 7 and New Order. I was just so pleased watching you toddle off, do your first 3. It's great that you're back to it. Now back to my question: who do you want? Come on, There's got to be someone like, you know, whether it's Morrissey or Nick Cave. Can I even still say Morrissey's name? I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit of an idiot, but I still like.
But,
I
you know.
I like his music up until Vauxhall and I, and then kind of I'm not that fussed after.
Well, it's Rick Astley now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Johnny's not too chuffed about that, is he?
Well, no, he's all right. If you read properly what he says, he's all right with that.
Yeah.
Now, come on, just tell me one artist you just would be like, yes, I will be there now. You would, you know.
I would. Do you know what? I'd quite like to shoot Foo Fighters. I think Dave Grohl would. I think
he's going to give you something.
He's going to give you something. Yeah, absolutely. And I do. Yeah, I've not really photographed much kind of that end of the rock scale, if you see what I mean.
Well, next, I think they're in town next year, aren't they? Is it Old Trafford they're playing, or?
Yeah, and I've not done a stadium gig either. I've never photographed a stadium gig, so
right,
that would be cool. Another kind of tick, box ticked. I've done festivals. I've done obviously loads of venues, but I've never done a football stadium. So yeah, I could kill two birds with one stone there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now we're speaking about wish lists there almost, and this podcast continues to surprise me, and what Chris and I are really proud of, and we mean that in a genuine way, is the eclecticism that we have in our range of guests. And today, I couldn't believe it when Chris said we're going to be interviewing Eddi Reader. I could not believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And what a wonderful time we had with her. Everyone, I think, will just remember Fairground Attraction and Perfect straight away, that song. And rightly so, because actually it's a wonderful song. But her voice is just so amazing. And this interview really opened up her music to me. And I've been listening to a lot of her, the folk stuff, the jazz stuff, the Robert Burns album is incredible. And what a great chat. It was exciting, wasn't it? I think I could say that, Chris.
No, absolutely.
We were both excited about that.
And yet again, we've had a guest on where we go, we've not scratched the surface there. So I think we'll get Eddi back on, because we've not talked about touring with Fairground Attraction very much. So yeah, we can fill in the gaps next time.
Don't think I haven't noticed what you're doing as well, Payne, because as we do these interviews, almost at the end of every interview, you say, we've hardly scratched the surface, so we're going to have you back. I know what you're doing. You're immediately doubling our episodes. So, when we're a year old, are we just going to go back through and interview all the same people again?
Yeah. I mean, Alex, this ain't my first rodeo.
Definitely looks like your first cowboy hat. I think you want to try again.
You want to see these chaps, mate?
I can't. All I can see is your backside.
Yeah. Lovely. There's an image.
And it isn't. But that's what I like about these interviews as well, is that even if we don't go back and revisit some of our guests, what I like is that when you're chatting with someone, Chris and I have our sort of list of questions that we might like to ask. And then it just goes all over in different places, and you really enjoy it. And then afterwards, you're thinking, I didn't ask that, didn't get a chance to ask that. And it's not about, a good interview. And I'm not saying our interviews are great, but good interviewer doesn't try and just force the questions they want to ask. They go with it. And that very much happened with Eddi today. And it's just lovely hearing her speak. And Morrissey gets a mention again. He's already had one mention in this podcast, and I love her little story about Morrissey, and she talks about cover songs and how she started and how she first got to the States. I won't spoil with who if you don't know her history, but there's loads in there.
Busking,
that was just
busking as well.
Yeah, she was a busker. I love that. That's how she started out. Did you spend time busking, Chris?
I did it a couple of times, and I found it quite demoralizing.
Right, okay.
I remember one time there's a place in the Borders, north of the Borders, called Traquair, and there's a big country house there, and every year they used to have a country fair there, and you'd have lots of craft, and there would be dancing and live performance. And me and a friend of mine, Adam, he brought his keyboard and I brought my saxophone, and we played and made nothing. I think we must have been about 13, 14, something like that. But then we were playing by this kind of statue. It was like a temporary statue, and it had been secured by these wires to the ground, and I didn't see the wires, and I tripped over the wire and fell on my sax, and the crook of the sax went onto my chest, and I bent it in half. I've still got it.
What, your chest or the?
Yeah, exactly. It felt like I'd bent my chest. And have you never bent your chest?
Gosh.
Yeah. So we made nothing, and I broke my saxophone. So I think that might be the last time I ever busked.
No, I just want to get you onto Market Street in the middle of Manchester and just have you playing Baker Street. Then I'll do an interpretive dance. I'll do an interpretive dance for you. It'd be brilliant.
Well, I have to say that self-same fair, the Traquair Fair that I played at, that was the first time I ever saw and heard Tom Bancroft play, a jazz drummer that I included in my jazz portrait, my drumming portrait exhibition. Okay. And he was in a band called Stepping Stains, and yeah, they were phenomenal. It's the first time I'd heard jazz and folk smashed together.
Love that. Yeah, and that's what I like about Eddi, is that actually she's crossed quite a few genres.
Yeah, absolutely.
In her career.
Well, she's surrounded by folk musicians, but just the nature of her voice, it has that real jazz influence as well. And
I love some of her references, which I sometimes I'm paranoid that people just think I'm going, oh yeah, when someone names an artist. But some of those old 40s and 50s singers, the very tight harmony trios and that, it just reminds me of my dad and what my mum and dad listened to. But she's just fantastic. And before we hand you over to Eddi Reader, I can't believe that you just dropped the bomb that you'd met her before and you'd never told me. And I won't say any more because it's a lovely little anecdote. But my mouth was like, are you kidding me?
Well, shall we get to the episode?
Let's do it.
Here is Eddi Reader.
Indeed, welcome to the Gig Stories podcast. We are now the podcast that doesn't just chat about live gigs, but we're actually now experiencing live gigs. And today we're very excited because we're joined by someone who is about to head out on tour themselves. Singer, songwriter, actor, presenter.
Yeah, I did a bit of that.
Author and most excellent order of the British Empire owner.
And 4 honorary degrees just sitting on my couch.
PhDs?
Strathclyde, Edinburgh, Stirling, and Caledonia University. All made me an honorary degree.
It's Her Highness Eddi Reader.
Yeah, get it right. Hi, I'm 5'10" and a half. I've always been higher than everybody.
I could only wish to be 5'10", Eddi.
I used to love it when in the 70s, some of the men in the folk clubs would all go, "Hey, little lady." Be looking up at me.
Yeah, looking up at you, exactly. What a pleasure, and what a treat. I'm going to be honest, I've had a few butterflies in my stomach this morning, and so when you popped up on the screen, I was like, oh, it's actually happening. This is real. So thank you for taking out time. We're just going to jump straight in, because you shared something, as we just said hello, that I want you to mention on here. You've literally just received something. Is it via email or was it on your phone?
It was actually a messenger on Facebook, and one of my friends, Ian Wilson, he's a mad collector of everything rock and roll.
Love that.
And he has my first itinerary, which is the people that go on tour know that we all get itineraries at the beginning of a tour, and it tells you where you're going, where you're staying, how long it takes to get in between each places, what you're doing each day. The days off are travel days. Don't go far away. You're going to be picked up then. And so we also call them the Book of Lies. This is sometimes because they always get changed on the road, and you think you're in one city when you're in somewhere else. So I've got these 2 sheets of paper, and it's from 1982, and it was my first ever job, professional, with the Gang of Four, going on tour of America, landing at the Us Festival in LA, which was 60,000 people. I was working in a factory the week before, and here I was. I passed the audition and I got the job, so I was on tour, and I've sent it to you so you could see it there. There's a bit of a joke. There's usually jokes in the itinerary, Book of Lies. There's usually so it's sort of it's written out like, John King is playing Brian Ferry, Andy Gill is being Pete Townsend, all that, and I'm Eddi Reader as the Queen of Scots. It's tour managed by Lenny Pico, and it's Warner Brothers. So it's Warner Brothers, and they're presenting us to, if you look at the dates, they're from the 1st of September right through to the end of October. There's only about 2-3 days off in all of it.
And what year was this?
This is 1982, September 1982. And I'm glad Ian Wilson has sent it to me. And I'm like, God, it's thrilled me no end to just sort of pinpoint that time, because for me, it's just vague memories.
Yeah.
As I get older, getting vaguer, but definitely what's important is that on that tour, for my first experience of what would be called making it, is being successful at getting a wage and being on tour. And what I was doing was banging a Simmons kit drum, and I was singing, I love a man in a uniform. And I loved that band. I just adored the Gang of Four. I loved their politics. I loved everything about them. And I was so proud to be in their band. And for that brief moment, I was in their band. And me and Sarah Lee were the 2 women in the band. And all the audience used to shout, "Goff with girls, goff with girls." That's Gang of Four girls, for those who don't understand my accent.
How did that happen? How did you end up being in Gang of Four?
Well, it's just drive on my part and wanting to get out of the factory in Irvine, the knitwear factory. I'd been busking all over Europe and did okay, made my money just doing that every day, my supper and my accommodation or whatever it was. If I was camping, I just, and I met people and musicians, and I was with good friends. I was in good company. And I did the Vendage down the south of France. By the time I got home in that November, it must have been 1981, I was absolutely ready for a bath and a bit of, I need to do something serious with what I do, whatever it is I do, I need to do something with it. Because I was kind of thrilling myself with it. But at the same time, there was a limit to it. There was a ceiling to busking. You busk in the street, people throw money at you. People come up and offer you accommodation and food and let me take you home. You're a poor wee soul. You need help. You get all that, and you get exercise in your throat. You get to project so that I can now sing from one end of the street to the other. I don't need a microphone. That kind of stuff was really good training, and also learning lots of brilliant busking songs like Brown Eyed Girl or Tupelo Honey. And Tupelo Honey, Van Morrison actually made me probably about 200 quid in Lyon in France. You know, I'm never paying him anything for it, but that was the actual value of, you know, learning a good busking song. And so all that I had that sort of those chops, and I was very quick. I could do harmonies with people. I'd learned guitar very well. And then my friend in London had phoned me in Irvine. I used the phone box outside the knitwear factory, Mary Queen of Scots, the knitwear factory. And we made golfers' jackets, you know, cardigans with the diamonds on them. I was rubbish at it. But anyway, he said to me, listen, Eddie, if you want to go anywhere, you have to start answering adverts, like at the back of I mean, I'd answered adverts in Glasgow in the Evening Times, but that was just for charity singers or whatever musicians wanted. But he said, it's really vital you don't answer the adverts that are not in a box, because they're just people like us with no money. You have to answer the adverts in a box, because that'll be a record company and they will have money and they will be able to pay you a wage. And so I took his advice, and there was 2 in the NME that week, that Thursday, I remember. And I went in the phone box with all my 10 pences. One was for Shack Attack, and the other was for the Gang of Four. Unbeknownst to me, it was the Gang of Four. So I answered both, and I talked to them on the phone. And the Gang of Four bunch, their manager or whoever he was, I can't remember his name now, but their representative had said, "What have you done before? What have you done before?" And me and my kind of, "Hi, chutzpah," I was like, "Oh yeah, I've sung Van Morrison, I've sung Simple Minds, I've been all over the planet." Busking. I didn't add the word busking, and I didn't add the word doing covers while busking. You know, I just sort of painted this picture. And so they got me down for an audition, and the audition was the day before their appearance on the Old Grey Whistle test. So there was 2 girls, it was me and this other one. And she was wearing shades, and I was to play the Simmons kit. And I went into my mum's house, and I got all her pans and pots, and I managed to get a loan of all the Gang of Four's records, and I just learned everything by rote. I learned every harmony. So by the time I got to the audition, and Andy Gill didn't know where the chorus came, I knew where the chorus was. I knew how that went, and I knew where that came in, and I had it. And when we did, they used both of us, both of the singers, for the Old Grey Whistle test, which is famously on YouTube now. You can see it. The Gang of Four doing "I Love a Man in a Uniform" and "Call Me Up," I think they're doing. And "We Live As We Dream Alone," which is a beautiful song. And I got the gig, and they offered it to me and said, "We're doing the Us Festival next week." Actually, it was a British tour first, and I think there was 6 people and a dog going. There wasn't many ticket sales. But when we got to America, punk hadn't quite faded. So it was still at its height in 1982. And it was 60,000 people, and there was Lords of the New Church, the Police. I think the Police's manager, Copeland, was interested in the Gang of Four, and they were on EMI at that point in Britain, but Warner's over there. I don't know, there's some sort of deal going on. I didn't know much about anything. I had never been on a plane before. And I think when I was on the plane was when I admitted to them that I'd never been anywhere. And I was just I wasn't just but I was a busker that was very good at my gig. But
amazing.
I sort of admitted to them, and they loved that. That was great about it. John King and Andy Gill were just over the moon. Plus, I could drink them under the table, which they really enjoyed.
Because surely that's right up their street, isn't it? That someone would do that. I mean, that's as punk rock as you can get, isn't it?
I was more punk than any punk I know, even though I was a folkie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you were mentioning the support acts that you had on that tour, which were pretty well. They weren't bad, were they?
Pretty great, momentous. Actually, what was interesting was somebody on Twitter, I'd posted the 2 pages of my first tour itinerary with the Gang of Four, and it had Atlanta, Georgia in it, and somebody said, oh, I see you're playing 2 nights in Atlanta. I wonder if Mr. Michael Stipe came, and I said, he not only came, he supported us. The REM were supporting the Gang of Four in that tour. They all slept in a bus outside the hotel that we were all in because they couldn't afford a room. And it's like really, and I fancied Mike Mills, and Mike Mills fancied me, and Sarah Lee fancied Jefferson, their tour manager, and Jefferson fancied Sarah Lee, but nothing ever happened. We just all we were all kids, like we were like college students on
Eddie, tell us the truth.
I tell you what, Mike was really sweet, because when they were big and famous and I met them in London and I went backstage, they were I think Orange Juice had just got up the charts, and Michael was saying to me, it's all right for you had Perfect, it sort of gets you in the door and all that. And I'm like, oh, but you are great, what's the problem? You don't need a hit. These are brilliant. And he's going, no, you don't understand. And they're selling out the Hammersmith Pally or whatever it was, Odeon. Yeah. And I went backstage, and Morrissey was hanging around backstage, and he's going, what are you doing here? And I was like, well,
to you,
I'm mates with these guys because they were on tour with me. What do you mean they were on tour with you? Says Morrissey, all in a bit of a huff about it, And
of course.
I said, well, they supported the Gang of Four. What, you were in the Gang of Four? Yeah, I was in the Gang of Four. So being in the Gang of Four has been so much kudos for me that I love throwing it into the conversation sometimes, because people think, oh, you're the bunch of social workers that had a #1 hit with Perfect in the middle of the Thatcher era. Yeah, we're not interested. And you throw in the Gang of Four, and they're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Oh, that must have been really sweet having Morrissey stuck for something to say.
Well, he was sweet, actually, after he found out. And then he asked for my hand and said, could you walk me to the sound desk? I'm frightened to be alone. And then he wrote to me a few times, and I'd never answered. He wouldn't leave a number that I could return the call and all that. And I went, oh, bugger off. If you want to be my pal, I'm here. But if you're going to play silly buggers, you're talking to the wrong shipyard daughters, prospective women. I'm not up for playing those games with anybody. Be pretentious if you like, but don't do it with me.
I love it. Do you know what? In your introduction, I nearly put political activist.
I don't think I am, really. I just think mostly when I was growing up, people talked politics. They did.
Yeah.
I'm a trade union girl. We went to Christmas parties, and the trade unionists supplied all the gifts and all the parties and all the summer trips to the beach. That's just part of our lives up here. I mean, in Glasgow anyway,
Yeah.
The busking, were you ever sort of outspoken when you were doing that as well?
Oh, you mean like Speaker's Corner? No.
Yeah.
No, I never did any of that. I didn't do it. I just sung songs. I mean, I don't really think my opinion matters about anything, except that when I see something that's not fair, I'll always stand up for what I think isn't fair. It's got to be fair, isn't it? I mean, most of us want things to be fair, and we don't want to be cruel to anyone. So
no, but if you're working and if you're a folk singer working in the folk music genre, the majority of folk songs are political anyway.
Very much so. And it's certainly before the Gang of Four, my live experience, if we're talking about that, was folk clubs. And for example, you'd go to Irvine Folk Club, and all the folk clubs around Ayrshire, around the Ayrshire coast, you'd have Ayr and, of course, Kilmarnock. And Kilmarnock was much more traditional, and you had to sing a song of your cultural background, whereas you could go to the Irvine Folk Club, which was a little bit more James Taylor-y. You could do a Joni Mitchell song or Bob Dylan tune, and it wasn't so frowned upon. Certainly when I got to Glasgow Folk Club, which was the Star Folk Club, well, that'll give you some idea of what was happening there. It was the Communist Party Club, so it's kind of communism, trade unionism, socialism. Basically, we come from that conditioning because we all live in tenements where people all share the soup. We all share the experience of working for the same boss. The guy goes to work and the woman stays at home and looks after the kids. somebody needs something, somebody else will go and give them it. It's not hard to understand why Glasgow is particularly radical. It's because it's got all that background in people's rights and make sure we're okay. And even the Hindu community and the Muslim community now, who now live in Pollokshaws, well, you heard about Kenmure Road, where Priti Patel tried to take away those poor people that have been living here amongst us. These are our people. See, if you live with us, you belong to us. That's the way we are. And you don't get to take anybody out without our permission, you know? And I think that's why, you know, I probably come across, somebody said to me, I'm a political person. I don't think I'm political. I'm just my dad's daughter, you know. I and my mother, if you think I'm political, you want to hear her talk about Thatcher. My God, the air goes blue.
I like that. I like, though, this part of you, and it reminds me, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I'm a massive fan of the Manic Street Preachers.
Oh, yeah.
And James Dean Bradfield, the singer, when Nicky, the bass player, and Richie, guitarist, went off to university and they decided to start a band, James Dean Bradfield taught himself to play guitar and taught himself his trade by being a busker in Cardiff. And he would be on Queen Street in Cardiff. He'd come from the Valleys, which was a very similar situation. You know, we had the miners' strike of the 80s and Thatcher, and they got their name from James Dean Bradfield's reaction. He was busking, but he wouldn't accept money because he said he was learning his trade. He was learning what to do, and people would give him money, and he chased them down the street with it, saying, I don't want it. And he was known as the Manic Street Preacher because he was, you know, it was punk and it was political and telling the people about, you know, what's happening there in the valleys with the miners and their families while singing, you know, Clash
That's
songs.
Right.
And,
it does. Like there's always been a kind of pressure, a fine line, if you like, between exploiting what you do and loving what you do. So you love it and you find that you want to give it generously, but it also can provide you with a living. And that has always been tough for socialists. You know, when I first worked with the Gang of Four, that was okay because the wage was similar to what I was getting on the dole because they didn't have a lot of money. But when I worked for the Eurythmics and Alison Moyet, I was then on something that my dad would earn in a week. I was getting that a week. And I kind of felt a little bit, there was something not okay about inviting them to my plush hotel room. And I did feel a bit, there was something different about me that this was now happening. And then when we got to number one with Fairground Attraction and all that, there's an elitism and a hierarchy that's involved in the music industry, which I never have approved of, never, ever. I'll look at somebody like Ella Fitzgerald or Louis Armstrong and they are gods to me. And I don't see a problem with seeing somebody in what they do as being so beautiful that you feel blessed even listening to it. But I do think that this idea that somehow you're a god just because you can string, you know, a little tune together, I find that quite odd. And I think it does remove you. What is it? Bruce Springsteen talks about it, the darkness at the edge of town. When you make it and suddenly you're not part of your family anymore. You're not part of your community. You're now somebody that's kind of moved beyond, and other people see you as distant from them, even though you don't want to be distant from them. So that stuff is difficult, I think. And I understand it. I tell you who else did what the Manic Street Preacher guy did was Robert Burns, because he decided that he wouldn't take money for his contribution to the Scottish songbooks in the latter part of his life. So he got money initially from publishing his book of poetry. I think I read somewhere he got the equivalent of £500 when the wages of the farmer was £15 a week. So he got 500 right away for this book. And he bought his mother cloth, and his sisters got hats from France and all that. But when he got to the latter stage of his life, which by the way was only 36 when he died, he decided that he couldn't he couldn't marry the earning from the thing that he loved, the thing that he felt was saving his day. And he did the tax excise man job to get money. So, but yeah, it's an odd thing for musicians. We have that in us, I think, some of us.
I think it's in the art, in the creative arts as well. I mean, I know Brecht said food first, art later. You know, so you make sure that you've got the food on your plate. So don't feel bad about taking money for the stuff that you're creating, you know.
Yeah, I think there are ways of talking yourself down. Certainly when I did the lottery, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but I was asked to go on the lottery by Warner Brothers, who I was signed to. And at this time, I felt a little bit that I was part of a machine rather than part of the creative drive that I always had and the love for it. So, which I've got back to, thank God, because I own my own work and I produce my own things. But then I was beholden to the company that had just given me a big advance, and they needed me to do certain amounts of publicity. And I thought some of it was a little cheesy, actually. And I did think that lottery was against my principles in general, that making people gamble when they could buy a premium bond and they would constantly be in the loop for getting the big million. But this way, they were just making people pay money. And it was supposed to go to charity, but in actual fact, the directors were all making millions. So the directors of the lottery, that day that I was asked to do the lottery and, you know, sing a song to promote my record and press the button, that very day, The Guardian had printed a headline, or the day before, with the 5 people that were directors of the lottery. And their slogan was, "It could be you." So they used that slogan for the lottery, "It could be you." But underneath their pictures, they said, "It's definitely them."
Yeah. Because
they were all winning this big windfall. And so when I went on the lottery, I thought, what would John Lennon do? What would John Lennon? I was fighting with my own principles, and I knew I had to do the publicity, otherwise the record company would drop me. But I also didn't respect the idea of the lottery. And so I said, "It could be you. It's definitely Camelot," and then pressed the button. Well, all hell broke loose. The BBC were never going to have me on the telly again. No artist since has been allowed to speak before the button's pressed. That all changed. And then on top of that, I phoned my dad, because they're all like, "Oh, Eddi's on the lottery." You know, they're all thinking this is success upon success upon success. This is all meeting Elvis to my mum and dad, you know. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is, whether I get an MBE or, you know, or at the top of the charts, or I'm in a plane. I'm successful, you know, and so I'm on the telly. And I phoned my dad and he went, "Hen, principals don't pay the rent." He was so angry with me.
As if.
Even though he's a socialist guy and he taught me all the stuff that I know, he thought that I was shooting myself in the foot a wee bit.
Afterwards, did you find that there were actually repercussions, certainly with regards to your relationship with the BBC and that kind of thing?
Not any that I paid attention to. I mean,
good.
If I paid attention, probably I'd find there was somebody somewhere that said, "That's it, she's not getting another gig in the BBC." But that isn't true either. That didn't happen. No. I did end up getting a gig in the BBC with the younger ones that had replaced the ones that they'd sacked. So it's, you know, and people have forgotten it already. And it's not but at the time, the record company was very angry with me. And I said, "Look, you want me to do this thing, I'm doing it, but I can't, they're going to have to accept that I'm who I am, you know, that's what I do."
Shall we just head back in time? We'll just, what was your musical upbringing like? Was there a lot of music when you were growing up?
It was all live music, and I'm not talking about gigs. I'm talking about, I don't know, probably about 50 people, 56 or 60 people, all fired into a 2-bedroom flat in Maryhill, Glasgow, with Brill cream, and their shoes shined so gleamingly that you could see your face in it. And you can't see people above the waist because everybody's smoking. And everybody sung. everybody was singing. And that was the bit where the kids all hated it because they shoved the records off. We'd be dancing and playing the records. Party for every occasion, christening, baptisms, communions, whatever was going on, New Year, Christmas, birthdays, just parties for everything, anniversaries, all back at the 2-bedroom flat in Maryhill. And everybody was dressed to the nines just for sitting in somebody's house. And I love that about the working poor that I come from, is they knew how to make good out of everything that they had and how to make soup when they had nothing but a carrot, and that party and that experience I had of seeing human beings emotionally connect to a song and explain their own love affair through a song, or how they loved life through a song. It could have been with Ushkabe, it could have been with a whiskey or not, or a drink, but whatever happened when you were singing in the house is you got the feeling that it was very important, very respectful. You had to shut up. You had to let the singer sing. You couldn't make a noise. And if you did, you were shouted at, get out the house, get out of the living room. If Uncle Shug has his teeth out and he's about to sing you a song that he spits all over you, you have to respect it. And everybody got applauded as if they were Doris Day, as if they were Frank Sinatra. And when I heard all that, I heard the orchestras. There was not one musical instrument involved. I heard all the orchestras. I heard all the background, the choruses where they all joined in. You could hear from one end of the street to the other. You'll never know just how much I care, and if I tried. I mean, Billy Connolly talks about the parties, but he talks about people that can't sing. But I was surrounded by people that could sing. They were great at it.
Was there an etiquette about it as well? I mean, were there moments where somebody would sing and there would be a hush and go, he's singing Davy's song there? Did everyone have their own song?
Songs. Yeah, people own songs. So my mother, before I was born, she was introduced to my father's family, a bunch of roughnecks from up Maryhill, and my mother was a little bit more refined from Anderson, although the Anderson council estate tenements didn't have any toilets. My dad's were more 30s build and they had a toilet, so they thought they were a little bit better, but they were rough as anything. And my mum was just a bit more quiet and demure, and she was the youngest, and her mother was Irish, Southern Irish, so they had my mother and all her sisters were very, very bonny, very beautiful women. My mother herself looked like Elizabeth Taylor. She had that sort of black hair and beautiful teeth and gorgeous green blue eyes. And she was invited back to my father's roughneck house, and they're all boys and they're all like Beatles fans, and and they're all kind of rough and ready, and they're shipyard workers and bus drivers, and she started singing, and she had this song that I'd never heard before called Friendly Persuasion, which was a Pat Boone song, I think. Right. And it's from a film about the Amish, about this boy that wants to go and fight in the war, but the Amish don't believe in fighting, and the father has to pull him back, and then the boy kills a man and he has to deal with all that. But the song is the title track, and it's the I love, soft as da dee 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 dee. And anyway, my mother, of course, was asked to sing because the readers love to sing, and they sing and they're raucous. And my mother sat them down, and she was made to sing this song, this beautiful song that she loved singing. And they all fell in love with her. Every one of them, all the men started crying. all the delight now. Then from years after, when we were at a party, oh Jean, sing Friendly Persuasion. Jean, come on, Jean. And I just, as a little girl, I was like, I was amazed at this power that a song had over big, strong, macho shipyard workers, that they would weep like that. And I love the power of music for that. I love the way it can transform you. And no scientist has managed to convince me that it's anything but heavenly. It's just there's something that you get blessed just by being in the room, sitting next to somebody at a fire, singing or saying a poem, and that to me has always been, possibly because I didn't come from a family that was all pressurizing us to, go to uni and all that. We didn't have that, but we had this idea that we were all very important to them, and we all were valid regardless of what we did in life. And my dreams of singing to people, I started there, in the living room with my guitar. I'd learned it when I was 10. And so that became my rite of passage. And that then, what I did there, I took with my friends to the street and busked in Glasgow. That was the biggest shock, that people actually stopped and gave you money for nothing. Like, you get free money. You're cheating hard, like your Uncle Frank does every New Year. And when that all happened, and the first day, I remember, I've written a song about it called Glasgow Star, where I'm walking down the Great Western Road, that's here in the West End of Glasgow, and I'm surfing on a tarmac wave because I was right in the middle, and I think I'd taken magic mushrooms that day. But anyway, I had £50 in silver pennies, so I had all these coins, and so that's my cat feeder.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I've written that song Glasgow Star, which is about that feeling. And my friend had said to me, what are you going to do with all this money? Because the dole money was $27.60 at the time, and they paid your rent. So I had the freedom to sort of process what I was doing. I didn't have any pressure to go get a job. I just had this idea that I could learn my thing, or continue doing what I'm doing, and join a band and whatever. Sometimes I did try and get a job, but it was always an immense failure. And I came back with this money, and my friend said, what are you going to do? And I said, fish suppers are on me. So the first thing I actually did was buy a bag of Winkles. You call them Winkles in England, but we call them Whelks. And I was at the Barras, and I bought this massive bag of salt and vinegar Whelks, and that was my cockles, and that was my treat for winning this prize of this thing that I thought I'd invented. Crikey, you could just sing a song and people give you money. I mean, your uncle gave you gifts for your birthday, but you never knew that people would actually stop in the street. And so I got addicted to doing it, actually, because of that. Really, I got addicted to that appreciation coming back to me. And then I got cocky about it, because I knew I was kind of quick and I could get harmonized very quick. I could do harmonies. My ear was, I could mimic very well. And I noticed it in lots of singers since, Amy Winehouse had that mimicking thing. She could mimic and she could put on accents. And I had that with what I did. I like to impersonate. And then I enjoyed, what I can say is I enjoyed changing the atmosphere. So I could change the atmosphere. If I had the right situation and I felt good, I could stand in a tube station, or I could stand in front of 2,000 people, or I could be at a private dinner with any prince or king or queen, and I could change the atmosphere and everybody would feel it in the same way. And that's where I found the egalitarianism in music, that we are all able to be one when we're listening to something. And the performance aspect of it is also listening. We're also listening. We're giving it out, but we're not really clear how it's going to come out. And when it does come out, it comes back to us quite immediately. And I just think it's a meditative and medicinal form of making a living. And if I didn't make a living at it, I'd still be doing it, if you know what I mean.
So do you consider the busking to be your first live performances?
No, my first live performances was when I was 8 in knitting class, Mrs. McDonald's knitting class. And every week we'd have an after school knitting class and we'd make little purses. And there was one boy, Gerard, he was in there, and the rest of us were all women. And the girls were very much the popular girls. They were all in the knitting class. And I was in it basically because I kind of wanted to be part of their team, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't be part of their team. I wasn't pretty enough, or I was too skinny. My socks fell down all the time. I had egg on my tie. I didn't brush my teeth right. I was a bit of a mess. I thought I was a bit of a mess. And I couldn't see anything. My eyesight had deteriorated, and I didn't tell anybody for about 3 years. So I was just banging into lampposts and walls. And Miss McDonald had her favourites, and she had the big bouffant hairdo, the big piled high black hair. And to ease her boredom, she would ask the girls to do a turn. And one of them, Jacqueline, would get up and she would do a country dance. Another one would get up and do a magic trick. And then Belinda, who was the most beautiful of all and the princess of the classroom, eyelashes that stopped her sleeping because she couldn't close her eyes. Just the most beautiful girl, had all the great gear. She's only 8 or 9. And all the boys loved her. And all the girls wanted to be her. And I just wasn't in that group. And I put my hand up. I got my dad. I realized that I could do this thing that I used to do while cleaning my mum's house or looking after my 6 siblings and other people's babies in the street. I used to sing them to them and lullaby them. And I sung in the Tenement Close, which is the best reverb ever. I've been looking for it ever since. In every studio I ever go to, I want Tenement Close reverb. And I said to Miss McDonald, I said to my dad first, when he came home from work, he was covered in black oil. And I said, Daddy, would you write me out the words to Love Me Tender? Great Elvis fans, my mum and dad. So he said, would you want them, Farhead? And I said, I just want to know them. And I kept it secret. And he wrote out, and there's bloody 6 verses to that song. Love me true, love me long, love me always, whatever it is. Millions of verses. And I learned them. And then that Thursday at the knitting class, Mrs. McDonald said, who wants to sing a song? And I was like, hand up. And of course, everybody was shocked. They were like, you? What? And of course, I got up and I shut my eyes and put my hands behind my head. I'll never forget the feeling. It's the same me that's inside me. So I had my hands and my eyes were shut, and my tears were streaming down my face. But I was determined, and because I knew I had this thing that I could do. It was like Kes, and I started singing. Love me tender, love me long, take me to your heart, for it's there that I belong and will never part. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfilled. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. And then I opened my eyes, and they were all like,
yes.
Back. And I just ended up, Belinda then asked me back to her house, do you want to come and play with my Barbie dolls? Would you like to come to mine for that? When I was suddenly part of, and it was currency then for me. I just realized that I kind of knew it. I don't know, maybe I think singers do when they're very young. They kind of know that they're just apart from everybody in a way. They're not chasing boyfriends or clothes or toys. They just want to be the singer.
Can I just ask you about that performance then? Because I would have thought if that was your first performance that you would have had, not nerves, but kind of the action of putting your hands behind your head is quite an open action, and you're kind of you're leaving yourself open there, and that seems like a really bold thing to do as an 8-year-old. Can you remember what the decision? Why you made that decision? Because I would have been crossing my arms as protection,
My logic, I think at the time, was I lean against the blackboard, and then if I could feel the blackboard with my hand, I won't fall over. I'll be steady. And that was a way, I think, of just keeping myself steady. There was definitely a reassurance in it. Like, I'm only relaxed. I'm just, leaning here nonchalantly.
Yeah.
I'm going to sing this to these people that don't really believe in me and probably don't like me. And I needed to, I mean, I'm certainly sure that when a singer is born or when a musician is born, I think more than anything, because I don't think it's just singers that have it. An artist, anybody that's got a sort of drive to see beauty in something. And I saw it in songs. I saw beauty in songs when other people didn't see beauty in songs. You know what I mean? It could be anything. It could be Run Rabbit Run, Flanagan and Allen coming through a radio or something. I'd be like, mesmerized. Whereas other people are going, get the bloody dishes done, you know?
Can you remember the first gig that you went to then?
Yes. Bob Dylan, Earl's Court Street Legal Tour. I got a free ticket and I was 6 rows from the front middle aisle, and my hands were bruised with clapping. My friends Becky and Fraser, who were kind of busking pals and the intellectuals. When I moved out of home and went to Glasgow, back to Glasgow from Irvine, which is a family home now. Out of Glasgow, we moved when I was 16. And so I moved back to Glasgow at 18. And my friends, they were all at university and all that. They knew big words and everything. And I was like, big, giant, foot-long words. And I was like, what does that mean? And I just felt like everybody was a god. Everybody was a star. Like there wasn't any difference between Elvis and the people that lived in the West End of Glasgow to me, because they were all totally intellectual and amazingly bright. And I had this real idea that I'd come out of the womb. I was just come out of the womb. I had my experience being second in command to my mother and her 7 children. But, and also I was the oldest granddaughter. So I was part of this rough and ready family that you just muck in and you get in there and you wash the dishes and you clean the house and you look after the kids and you change the nappies and you go to your bed and you get up and you go to school and then he goes to work and you iron his shirt and you sort it. That's my life. This is how you hang up a washing. That's my life. And so when I got to Glasgow and everybody was kind of having intellectual conversations about Proust and all that, and fucking, I was just like, what are they talking about? I don't know what they're about. But then I'd just sing a song and they'd all be going, like they all did in the class in Miss McDonald's knitting class. So I became, oh my God, this lassie. You want to hear this lassie? She's come out of the rocks of where she's comfy. And wow. And I think that I didn't impress myself the way other people were impressed by me, if you know what I mean. I wasn't impressed with me, but they seemed to be impressed. And so they took me busking and they loved Dylan and all that. So they got me a ticket to see Bob Dylan. And
did it seem special going to see Dylan? Was it?
Oh my God.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you remember from that gig?
Just as a gorgeous fiddle player. He had curly hair. I was in love with guys with curly hair, just did me in. I was like, whoa. And if you had a nice accent, I ended up out with the Earl of Morrissey's son because he had blonde curly hair, and he heard me singing up in Findhorn Folk Club, and he was like, "Hey, would you like to come to Blackbush with me?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to see Bob Dylan next year. I'll go to Blackbush with you." And I ended up staying in Grosvenor, in his house in Grosvenor Street, and in this Alice in Wonderland. For me, though, when I look back, it was Jeremy Kyle with posh accents because they were all nuts. But the father was an alcoholic, and the daughters were all sleeping with different men, and it was just it was a bit nuts. Certainly a bit less. There was nobody punching anybody in the face, but there was a lot of snide going on. A lot of snide undercurrents.
I love that. So, do you know what? We've totally gone over, and I do want to ask you. We've been talking about performing there, and you are about to head out on tour. In fact, you go in a couple of days and you go out on the 40 Years Live tour.
Yeah. And it's England I'm doing, because England's postponed to the end of this year and Scotland postponed to next spring. So it's kind of back to front. I was going to do Scotland the last year and then England. And so it's still 40 years because I haven't been live. I missed a year of being live. So I haven't done any. I've been doing a few Jules Holland gigs. That's been great. He's been really good to me. And I always feel like I'm getting a treat when I'm with him.
I was going to say, what is it like performing with Jules? Because I've seen him a few times.
He's the easiest person to get on with. Oh my God. They're just brilliant musicians. And you've got an orchestra on stage with you. You've got this brass orchestra. And for me, when you have something like that, that's orchestrated and written down, basically you're just the icing on the top of that. And it's like those old fantasies of the Duke Ellington Orchestra or Harry James would, Frank would walk out and start singing with Harry James, or Doris Day would walk out and start singing with, I don't know, Duke Ellington or whoever she sung with, the orchestras, and get the pretty dress on and just do your thing and then leave. So it's easy in that sense for me, but it's also challenging because you're not doing your own thing and you're not really communicating the way you would communicate with your own audience. When I do my own gigs, I'm recreating the Mary Hill party, because for me, that's the best way of listening to music. When you feel relaxed, when they feel relaxed and you feel relaxed. For years, I hated going to gigs because I thought audiences were being disrespected. You'd get places that were full of, like, there'd be urine on the floor and pints of beer and people standing in it, like paying 30 quid to go and see somebody and stand all night in that. I get the excitement of going to a gig, but for me, I thought that was very disrespectful. And also, I quite like the idea that you could just sit back and relax. So at my gigs, you have seats, and if I had my way, you'd have sofas. You'd have sofas where you could just lie back. But there, you've got to be careful because some of the songs are a bit soft and you might lullaby them to sleep. But I'm used to doing that with kids anyway. So,
are you nervous or anxious about this tour?
Well, I am a little, only because we have to remain in a bubble backstage. Usually when I do a gig, I'm in communication, and after the show, I'll go out and I'll meet people and just get a real sense of whether we had the same experience. And I enjoy those moments. They're special to me. Because you can do a gig and you can feel that you were a bit under par or not match fit. I like that phrase. I'm not match fit yet, until the fourth gig in. But the first or second gig, you might think, and you think you've disappointed somebody maybe, and you go out front and in the foyer, people are just like over the moon with you, and that sort of cheers me up, Yeah. And I will miss that because I'm not allowed to do that this time because we're shielding some of the members of the band, and so we have to remain in a bubble. But what's exciting about it is it feels a little bit like the old days because I'm getting in my own little car and I'm just going to tour around England.
Oh, really?
And yeah, me and John, we're just going to pack the stuff in the back, so I don't have any daft, airport security. You're carrying a bomb bollocks to go through. I just, and I can have makeup in the back. I don't have to hide it in the guitar case or anything and get it on the hold, or I can take a bag on with me in my car and we can stop wherever we want to go. And I like seeing the UK like that because there's so much to the UK that I adore. And I hate the fact that people think that there's a separation issue just by somebody changing a treaty. That's really annoyed me because I love England. England was my home for 28 years. I adore the people and my family there, and I love to go to Appleby, and then maybe go over to Tyneside, and then maybe over to Morecambe, and away down to Bath and Cornwall, and then St Ives and Hastings and the Medway, and there's just so much to the place. It's a Hull. God, it's just and Wales itself is another place. I think we actually need to, I would like to, and I don't really care about the industry side of it. What I want to do is get little art centres all in the towns and valleys and cities and wherever, and I want to do every one of them and just stay for a couple of weeks in Wales itself. I hate this just going to Cardiff and coming out again. It just annoys me that we don't spend time in the community. That
Come and stay with us in Cardiff.
Yeah.
Where do you play in Cardiff? Is it St David's Hall?
We've done St David's Hall. We've done this other place. It's like got an iron roof. Oh God, I don't remember anymore. The tram
shed.
Tram shed.
Yeah.
Did that last time, and it's not comfortable enough for me. I just, especially now, if I'm not able to speak to the audience and I'm not able to meet them, and then I really think a smaller venue, because I'm not in the top of the charts anymore. I'm okay with having 50 people turn up. I'm all right. I don't have an ego that needs 300 people or 3,000. I'm okay. When I did it Ireland about 10 or 12 years ago, Fairground Attraction were not around anymore, and people forget who you are, and the promoters don't want to invest in you. So we just decided to phone the venues ourselves. And I built it up, playing Waterford, Wexford, and Tipperary and Killarney, and I'd play all the little art centres, and eventually I was doing Vicar Street in Dublin again,
Eddi, we are going to take you through the quickfire round.
God.
Yeah, we'll see how quick it's going to be. It's not going to be quick. Who are we trying to kid? Who has your favourite voice? Who's your favourite vocalist live?
Oh, live. Oh man, too many. I'd have to say my mother.
That is brilliant.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
In fact, I don't even want to comment any more on that. You can leave it there.
We'll take that.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
She nearly joined a band. That's the thing. I might not exist had it not been for her shyness. She was so shy. This Irish show band, she used to go to Ireland on her holidays, and they asked her to join because she sounded like Ruby Murray. And,
really? Right.
Yeah, that was her voice. And nevertheless, I'm in love with you. And so she was a 50s singer, and she could have been, somebody that probably ended up under a drunken table in Los Angeles, and I wouldn't be here. So I'm kind of glad of her nerves that she ended up giving that up.
What would you say is one of your most memorable gigs where you just felt like that was as good as it gets? And this is as a performer.
Well, there was one time that I hang on to, which was down somewhere at a folk festival, I think Sidmouth or something. And I remember particularly coming off stage and thinking that I had kind of transcended my own body, that I got to the end of the gig and thought, what actually happened to me there? But recently, these gigs that I've been doing after COVID, I think there's something happens. It's to do with trauma. Like if you have a little bit of trauma, that you can turn it into a most transcendent experience. And I saw a fight in Aberdeen a few years back, and it was right in front of me, and then I had to perform, and that was a really special gig. There was something that happened just by the fact that I saw something that was dramatic like that and quite anti-human for me, or maybe really human. I don't really know. It was so intimate to see that happen that when I got on stage, I felt I needed to keen it out the way the Irish keen when somebody dies. I needed to, and it wasn't all the sad songs. It was just, I just needed to open my lungs and make those wailing noises. And they make me forget my body. And so I've had a couple of those gigs. And recently, because of COVID, I think I've felt more musical when I did the Beacon Theatre in Greenock a couple of weekends ago. And and I did Shetland Arts Centre, the Morrell up there in Shetland, and people were all sitting there with their masks on, and I just transcended because I feel that I'm healing myself of something. I'm healing myself of being in a cupboard for 2 years, but also just wanting to grab on to the thing that makes my life force feel valid, you know.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because I'm not very eloquent, and it's something as a fan of live music that I've tried to explain over the course of this podcast, but throughout my life. Going to live music has always been a spiritual experience for me. And that feeling and that energy and the recharge. And in the last few weeks, Chris and I have been very lucky to go to live music again. And it's so hard for me to describe that feeling and to describe what it does to me, and not just in the moment, but afterwards. Now, this is a bit of a curveball here, but on Friday, Chris and I, we went to Heaton Park in Manchester. We live in Manchester, huge park, and we saw New Order. And New Order played their biggest ever Manchester date, which still blows my mind that they're in their 60s and this is their biggest ever Manchester gig. And as they came out and they started with the song Regret that I just love, I thought I was going to explode. And not just with excitement, and it wasn't alcohol fueled either. I wasn't drinking, and it was just my chest filled and my eyes filled with tears and my heart wanted to burst. And it was that feeling that only live music can give me. And I'm glad that it sort of has that for you as the performer as well.
Absolutely.
Because
I think if you're in alignment with it, you're doing the right thing. It just and you feel that you're in the right place. And of course, I was just, while you were talking, I was remembering my own live experience with Paul McCartney, because he played recently. Wow. And he played in the SECC before COVID, and we all went to see it. I got tickets, me and John, and I had no idea it was going to affect me like this. But what I have, which I didn't realize, was the connection to McCartney through the Beatles, through my uncles, through my aunties babysitting for me and their posters on the wall. And one of my very early memories was going to Saltcoats Beach with my family, which is where we all went on holiday, and a helicopter buzzing. I was in my auntie's bunk bed, and she was babysitting us. She must have been about 16, and there was Paul McCartney in all these glossy pictures everywhere, and the helicopter stopped above my head, and a rope ladder came out, and Paul McCartney climbed down in my dream. In my dream. I'm like 6 years old. I'm in bed, and I'm dreaming that this guy called Paul McCartney, who's in all these pictures, and my auntie drools over him, is coming down the ladder, and he reaches down and he goes, "Come on," and he scoops me up and he climbs back up the ladder with me, and I'm off the beach, and I'm looking at my family all down on the beach, all waving at me, and that was it. I woke up, and then years later, when Fairground Attraction were successful, him and Linda were doing the crickets at an in-house gig in London, and he said to me, "Come on, Ginge, get up and sing with us." So I got up and sung with him and the crickets, and that was it. That was my only real experience, and I was desperate to tell him about this dream that I had when I was a little girl, and I couldn't say it. And then when we got the tickets to see him at the SECC, do you know what? I sat there and I wept and wept and wept and wept, because he's been the narrator of my life. He's just narrated our life in music the whole way through in my generation, from that 6-year-old right through. Everything that he's done, he's always been the guy there, you know. How
did that feel? I'm not even sure you can explain. How did that feel, going on stage and singing with
you? It's transcendent. Music is transcendent. There's something it's so powerful that you can. It's metaphysical. It's biologically cleaner than you. It's
Yes.
like it's like dialysis for your body. You get this whole blood. No wonder Keith Richards is still alive. He's just playing that great music all the time, because normally if he was working on the buses, he'd be bloody dead and in the grave by now. You know, they use music in hospitals. They say that you should play them music, and I did with my auntie who had a stroke at 80. I played her Ella Fitzgerald all day, and she only responded when she heard that music. So they do say that that connects the tissues up again, or connects the workings up again. And I don't know, but I nobody has to explain that to me, because I feel it. You just feel my skin goes cleaner. I lose some sagging. My hair goes softer. There's a curl in it that happens when I'm singing, when I'm on tour. Maybe a scientist, some clever guy.
Are you telling me if I call you in 2 months' time at the end of your tour, I'm going to see a completely different Eddie? Is that what you're saying?
I look all right. I've been gigging, actually. But that is okay.
Great.
But I mean, you should have seen me the other night when I wasn't gigging. I was drinking wine. Oh, but the deal is, I think that when you get that physical metamorphosis, it's some scientists would probably say, well, you're using your breathing apparatus better, you're getting oxygen in quicker.
No,
but it could be that. It could be that too. But the fact that I'll tell you another one is, I broke my back in Australia years ago, and I had to have an operation, and I was in such pain and agony that they had to push me around in a wheelchair. I'm telling you this because the miracle was that when I got to the stage, I was like, please let me do the gigs anyway. It doesn't matter. I'll just get on the stage. If I have crutches, I'll get on stage and I'll sing. And when I was singing, all pain left me. And all the crutches, I didn't need the crutches. I was shaking my arse. I was dancing. And then as soon as the gig finished, I was back in the wheelchair in agony, couldn't move. And I asked the doctor there, and he said, you're a Pavlovian dog, because you're doing something that you enjoy so much that you can't feel the electrodes pinging your arse. Like with the dogs, what they did was ping their arse with the electrodes while they were feeding them. And the dogs couldn't feel it while they were eating. So I'm singing, and it's my dog food. So I'm a Pavlovian. I think we all are Pavlovian dogs.
Yeah, probably.
I was going to say, do you want to hear one of my favorite gig memories of playing live? So I was in a Celtic big band, and in about 2005, we had a gig at Celtic Connections at the Piping Centre in the afternoon. Then
where's that?
Piping Centre is near Cowcaddens in Glasgow.
Ah, right, okay. I love that for the listener, just so you know, Eddie was actually pointing to where it was.
Yeah.
It's just up there.
Just over there. It's just behind my door. It's behind my door.
So we played this gig, but then at the night, it was around about 10:30, 11 o'clock. We had been asked to play at the festival club, and the festival club, you just buy a ticket for the club as a punter. You don't know who's going to play, and you know, it might be somebody who's just come off stage at the Royal Concert Hall. It could be a band like us who played at the Piping Centre at 2:30. So we went on and we played 2 tunes, about 12 or 13 of us, and we played us after we played our second one. We had to do an encore because we went down quite well, and we didn't have an encore with us, so we just had to play the second tune again, which from halfway through we thought, let's not take the piss. So we got to the end of that, and it was fantastic. And then after us was Eddi Reader.
Was that?
Yeah, you were after us.
Oh, I think I remember that night.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
I'm probably a bit steaming. It's usually about 3 a.m.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the festival club is carnage generally, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great fun.
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But
me too.
Yeah.
That was the best time for us. Celtic Connections, we used to put the kids in bed. They were in secondary school by this time, and me and John would get in the car and go park outside the hotel, where it was a central hotel at those days.
Yeah.
And we'd just spend the whole night up, come back at 8 a.m, go to bed, set the alarm, get them up for school, go back to our beds till 4 o'clock.
That is rock and roll.
So fun. So fun.
Christopher Payne, I cannot believe that you did not tell me that. I had no clue where that story was going.
No,
So
I know.
you've already met Eddie before.
Oh yeah, he's a Celtic Connections guy.
Yeah.
Thing is with Celtic Connections, which is a cultural revolution up here. It happens in January, which is a very cold month. And it's kind of cheers you up after New Year, and Christmas is all over. So you get at the end of January, beginning of February, and everybody shows up. And it used to be like 5,000 people would show up, but now it's like 14 million. And you've got people from the Basque region of Spain in it, and
wow.
Catalonia, and you've got players from Cape Breton and Canada and America, and then you've got the Irish show up, and now the English are kind of pushing in because they've started to respect it on radio too. It's been a few years now, maybe a couple of decades, but there was a time when nobody knew it was happening, and then no one outside of the area, and now it's just this world-renowned event, and it's so special. Actually, if you get the chance, just book the Holiday Inn across from the concert hall. Make sure you've got a room there, because that's where all the late night sessions happen now, and everybody after the gig just goes back to there, and we all just jam all night. So I'll be sitting there with Martha Wainwright and Billy Bragg and Sugar Nifty and Maddie Pryor might turn. The Oyster Band might come, and then some dudes from Australia and New Zealand, and then some Spanish amazing person, and and Jerry Donahue and Jerry Douglas and Danny Thompson, and we're all just playing together. It's amazing.
I need to put that in my diary.
Yeah.
No, you need to.
Great fun.
This is still the quickfire round. Here's a random one for you. Do you have a cover version that is your favorite to play live? And also, which song would you love to cover that you haven't yet done so?
I like singing La Vie en Rose.
Oh,
I like it because it was a kind of busking song, and also I learned how to speak French when I was busking out there, and
love it.
I love doing that, and I love bringing it back it's part of me. And
what about one that you've not covered?
But I've not actually. I don't think I've recorded it yet, so it might be one to think about. I might have it on as a live record somewhere. Also, as time goes by, I like doing that with in a guitar tuning, maybe a John Martin guitar tuning. I really enjoy that. But there's lots that I have. I love Elvis. There's some great Elvis ones I'd like to have a go.
Which one? You're only allowed to pick one Elvis song. Come on, let's pin you down. You're only allowed one Elvis song.
Treat me like a fool, treat me mean and cruel, but love me. Boom, 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 boom. And like that. I love that song.
Fantastic.
Apparently that's what Led Zeppelin, I just heard that the other day. Led Zeppelin they'd gone to meet Elvis. I think it might be in their documentary, and he said, "And what's your favorite song, man?" And I think Robert Plant said, "Oh, love me, treat me like a fool, treat me mean and cruel, but love me." And then when they were saying goodbye, Elvis peeked in the hotel room and went, "Treat me like a fool." Cheerio.
Next question in the quickfire round, and it's one that I really like, is where you have absolutely weird mashups when you go on tour or you play a festival. Who's kind of the weirdest matchup? Either you coming before a band that is completely unrelated to the kind of stuff you do, or you've been put together with a support act that it just doesn't make sense, or that maybe it's worked, but you wouldn't have thought it would work beforehand.
Maybe. I mean, I did this thing with a band called Elephant Talk a while back, and we did a wee tour. It was great. We did sit-ins, and they were all didgeridoos and samples, and I was just kind of keening all over it, which I quite like. I mean, I'm a fan of all genres, and I especially like things like the Cocteau Twins and that. And I love the way she sings. I love the way she uses her voice as an instrument. It doesn't have to have any lyrical recognition. It just has to be a musical thing, and I love that. So I think probably that was my most adventurous. And One Giant Leap I did some singing with them. That was great. That was just all African bands, African vocal bands, and then layered on to Asian folk music, layered on to Aborigine, layered on to some sort of rapper from New York, layered on to me singing some ethereal thing on top. And I enjoyed that. I thought that was a great mashup. One Giant Leap, it's called. And it was all for free. Everybody just played for nothing.
I love that. We're almost at the end. We've taken a lot of your time, and we've got a couple of questions. We've got a couple of questions.
Beautiful sunny day here in Glasgow. Gorgeous something.
We're in Manchester, so it's really not here.
Okay, it'll be fine tomorrow. And when I come on Wednesday, I'll bring the Glasgow weather with me.
Please do. Please do.
Well, you're playing the Met, aren't you?
I don't know. I'm playing Manchester. I know that my wee niece is coming, and I can't go back. I can't have her backstage, but so yeah.
Oh no. Oh, wait, let's not dwell on that. Let's not dwell on that.
The way it is for a while.
The if only question. Who do you really wish you could have seen perform live, and now it's impossible because they're not with us? And then also flip that. Who would you still really like to see live that you potentially could,
I saw Ella Fitzgerald live and Nelson Riddle when I was busking in London, and that was my big dream come true. That was at the Grosvenor Park. It's actually, there's some, you can go online and find out when it was, but I spent £200 on a charity ticket for this event.
Wow.
And that was what I spent my money on. But if Louis Armstrong was still alive, I would go wherever he is, and I would watch him do his thing. And I'd want to see that, if that could possibly happen. And I missed seeing people like Doris Day and Frank Sinatra, because I have a big 50s love of 50s stuff and 40s stuff. I'd love to have seen the Boswell sisters, because I think the Boswell sisters are amazing as female vocalists, harmonists.
I was going to say their harmony is just incredible.
Yeah, the comedian harmonists are spectacular. If you've ever heard the story of the comedian harmonists, who were 3 guys were Jewish Germans and 3 were not Jewish Germans, and they were banned by Adolf Hitler, and they were as popular as the Beatles in between the wars. Something like that. But today, I nearly saw Charles Aznavour, and I bought tickets, and then he died. I would still. I mean, I'm very lucky in that I've sung with a lot of my heroes. Kiki Dee, I sung with her, and I got her to sing Amorous to me at the breakfast table, just like sing it. And there's people that I adore, that I just I think I'd go to the ends of the earth if Louis Armstrong came back to life.
I love that.
Do you listen to still people I would? Who do I listen to?
Do you listen to much modern music?
Yes, I do. There's somebody my little niece has introduced me to called Olivia Rodriguez. Is it?
Yes, Olivia Rodriguez. Absolutely.
And I love. There's a song that she sung on something I heard, and I said, when I had my broken-hearted 30s, that would have been the song that I clung to if I was back then in that period of my life. But now that I'm in my settled 60s, I'm kind of broken heart songs I don't recognize me in them anymore. I understand the broken heart, and I understand unrequited love, like with A Fond Kiss. Oh my God. I often fantasize that I'd love to meet Robert Burns and bring him back to life and just walk him around and say, come here to show you what they've done about you. Come here to show you where they've put your picture. Come here to, you want to see your statue in Vancouver?
Well, that album featured quite a lot in our wedding reception. So I made a massive playlist, and there was loads from the original album, but also the deluxe edition, because my favorite ones were, I loved Coming Through the Rye. Absolutely loved
Myra
it.
Green, yeah.
Oh my God. And Banks and Braes. I loved that. I loved it when the band just kind of cuts loose, and just you need to hear this, Alex. I'll pop it on because we're going to do a playlist. We do a playlist for every episode.
Coming Through the Rye is spectacular because My Red Green and Anna Massey both had this tune. Well, Myra did this tune called Dram Behind the Curtain, which is about her granddad that used to hide the best whiskey behind the curtain at parties, which is similar to my granddad. So he'd hide all the good stuff, the Glenfiddich and all that. And then everybody else would get the bells and the Hague and the rubbish and the gut rot. And so it was called Dram Behind the Curtain. And I said, that tune, that's a mashup. That would be brilliant in between Coming Through the Rye, good buddy, coming through the rye. And then they play that right in the middle of it, and you can see them dancing in their wet petticoats. It's all about having sex in the long grass, basically.
I love that. Well, we've come to the end, I believe, Chris.
We've got one more question, and well, it's more a recommendation, basically. So we ask all our guests to recommend either a live album or a live track, or maybe it's just some footage of somebody performing live that we can find on YouTube or wherever. So just wondering if there's something that you can recommend for us.
There's a few, but the first thing I always go to is Sarah Vaughan singing Perdido. You can get that live. She does it live. And it's out of this world. Yeah. And she's got this drummer who's all dressed up in a sort of flamenco outfit. Spanish, some idea somebody had. Oh, and he's so miserable. He's like, why am I doing this? Being an idiot on telly. And she then is just dazzling with her beautiful vocal dexterity. It's just amazing.
Oh, yeah. That's a cracker.
Louis Armstrong doing Dinah. Dinah, is there anyone finer in the state of Carolina? If there is, let me know. And then he does the Elizabeth Fraser thing where he goes, and he just makes it all.
Brilliant. Alex, I was going to say this. We have scratched the surface here. Eddie, once the dust is settled and you've come back from touring, we'd love you to join us again because there's so much that we haven't even looked at. So if you come on again, that would be lovely.
No worries.
I love how you talk about the experience and music and singing. It's fantastic and it's genuinely uplifting. It's wonderful, and I can't thank you enough for your time.
Thank you. It's my conditioning. I learned that miserable people get better when they sing a song. I learned it at my mother's knee, so it works. And even if you're miserable, the singing of the song gets you out of the misery or accompanies your misery in a better way than just smashing your cup down on somebody's face.
And we hope you just really enjoy the next couple of weeks as well, your tour.
I hope so. 3 weeks. Yeah. I hope it's all right. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Eddi Reader. Thank you.
God bless.
There we go. What a wonderful interview. See, she's just brilliant. I always come out of these interviews feeling just, real joy, but I was just smiling. Just a beautiful woman, a beautiful person. And I love that she basically pissed off Morrissey, told him to go sling his hook. She's not playing his mind games.
No, absolutely. And Eddie sang for us. That was lovely. I mean,
a few times, and it's really nice as we speak to people. And listener, I think we're very honest with you. A lot of these interviews we do way in advance of when we release them. but it's really exciting as we speak to musicians anyway, to hearing their voice, their excitement about going on tour, playing live again and getting back out to their audiences. And that's the same with Eddi. And she said, she doesn't care if she's playing to 10, 20, 50 people or 200, 500. She just loves that face-to-face and that performance and being out with an audience again. And that was it's just lovely, wasn't it?
And if you've never heard Eddi live, I suggest you go. She's on tour right at the moment, and we've already posted the poster, which has got all the dates on. I was racking my brains trying to think of all the times that I've seen Eddi live, and in Glasgow, I think I only saw her once at this small. It was like a converted church called Cottiers in the West End. But then in Manchester, I've seen her at Sale Waterside. I've seen her at the Lowry, Bridgewater Hall, the Met in Bury. Where else? I've seen her loads. And
are you her stalker?
No, it's called being a fan of music, Alex. It's if you like someone and the way that they perform, occasionally you may want to go and see them again.
Sometimes you should just be brave about this, Chris. I've just seen Sam Fender for the third time in just over 5 weeks.
I was going to mention that. Yeah,
I'm his professional stalker.
Yeah,
don't be shy. Don't be shy or embarrassed. I mean, I'm stalking him outright. Okay. No, that's great. I didn't know that you'd seen her that many times either. And do you know what? I've never seen her, and now I want to. And I need to go. And I do love those occasions where you have a smaller audience. And so I really should jump on that opportunity. And
she's hilarious as well when she the chat in between her songs. It is like just being in the living room of a tenement flat with her. I know she talked about that in the episode. But that's what one of her gigs feels like. It feels that warm and welcoming and like you're part of a family.
I really like that. And I just feel I also think that's quite a Scottish thing. And that was really nice to hear. Well, we hope you enjoyed that too. Please let us know. And as always, just get in touch. There's no point me even telling you what to get in touch with, because we just love you contacting and give us your recommendations for guests, people that you'd love to hear. Send us your photos, pictures of your merchandise and your ticket stubs. And you can find us across Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Gig Stories Pod. And you can email us as well, can't they, Chris?
Yeah, you can email us at info@gigstoriespodcast.com. Oh, I nearly got that wrong.
Oh, got it.
Me getting all cocky. Do you know why that happened?
Go on.
It's because you were talking and I switched off.
And on that note, listener, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Click. That was Chris switching off. Bye.